My story begins in childhood when my father told me that nothing happens after we die. I became an atheist on the spot, and my subsequent medical education reinforced this certainty that what you see is what you get. I was confident that when your body dies, it's all over. As a physician, I was taught that death is the enemy to be fought at all costs. As a member of the hospital resuscitation team, I would rush to the rescue, pumping on a patient's chest and barking out orders, trying to save a life. But back in the 1980s, saving lives was almost always an exercise in futility. Virtually none of the patients left the hospital alive. I used to feel guilty putting the patients through what we called a flog. I would look down at the body and wonder if the person was conscious and what it would be like, how miserable and scary to be conscious while being subjected to a futile death ritual, only to slip away into oblivion. Amazingly, 2 years later, this is exactly what happened to me. I was totally aware as I went through the dying process. But instead of being scared, I was in a blissful transcendent state. It happened during my second pregnancy when an ultrasound showed that the placenta had grown over the birth canal and was covering the entire front inner wall of my uterus. This meant that during the cesarean section, the surgeon would have to cut directly through the placenta, which is essentially a spongy mass of dilated veins. To prepare for significant blood loss, I began donating my blood to be transfused back if needed. As my uterus enlarged, the placenta started to bleed. In the 7th month, I was admitted to the hospital where I had completed my training 2 years prior. The bleeding continued daily, and the plan was to deliver the baby as soon as its lungs were mature enough. My husband, also a doctor at the same hospital, came to my bedside every evening with our year-old twin boys for a bedtime story and a kiss goodnight. Finally, 1 month later, the baby's lungs were ready, and I found myself lying on the operating room table, being prepared for surgery. Bags of my blood hung ready on the 4th pole above my right shoulder. As the nurse scrubbed my abdomen and laid down the surgical drapes, I tried to act nonchalant, joking with my anesthesiologist as he inserted a large bore 4 in each arm. The cool flow of the anesthetic entered my veins, and I lost consciousness. I was unconscious for some time until suddenly I heard the anesthesiologist's voice, "Her blood pressure is too low." I was amazed to be awake, but not just awake, super alert, more aware than ever before in my life. It was wondrous that this heightened state was beyond the reach of the drugs bathing my brain. I could feel the painless tugging of the surgery, although I couldn't see because my eyelids were taped shut to protect the corneas. I could hear the anesthesiologist anxiously asking the surgeon about blood loss. The surgeon's tense answer was shocking, "The baby's gone." Just as my mind tried to grapple with those words, the anesthesiologist cried out that I had no blood pressure at all. In the next instant, I felt a profound stillness in the center of my chest. Something was missing, the beat of my heart. My heart had stopped beating, and nobody else knew it yet. Then, suddenly, I could see everything in the room. The bags of blood were already being transfused. My anesthesiologist crouched on his stool next to me, oblivious to the fact that I had no heartbeat. Then, a series of loud beeps from the cardiac monitor sent out the alarm. The anesthesiologist sprang up and slammed the large red knob on the wall, summoning the hospital resuscitation team. He flung off the surgical drapes and began pumping on my chest with his muscular arms. My ghostly pale body flopped up and down. The worst had happened. I had lost my baby, lost all my blood, and now I was having a cardiac arrest. But amazingly, instead of being terrified, I was watching the catastrophe from a space of extraordinary equanimity. Even as I realized I was dying, it was all over, and I was about to slip into nothingness. But first, a flog. In a moment, the resuscitation team would burst into the room, pounce on my body, and go through the motions of the usual ritual. But something in me already knew it was useless to fight. The only thing to do was relax and let go. The stillness in my chest expanded, and I could feel a current of energy drawing me inside. I let go into the flow, floating deep inside. All awareness of the room and my body dropped away. I was floating toward an edge, toward a vast emptiness beyond, and then gliding over an invisible threshold, I plunged backward in a graceful free fall, down and down into nothingness. Darkness engulfed me, and then nothing. No sense of the world or my own existence. Total blankness. Kaboom! A thundering sound echoed all around, and I was suspended in space as if I had exploded through some great barrier. I was free. The echoes faded away, replaced by profound silence and velvety darkness, like the night sky all around. An endless expanse of radiant darkness shimmered, mesmerizing in all directions without a horizon. It was an astounding beauty, boundless sparkling light everywhere I turned. This light looked back at me. It knew me. This light was conscious. This beautiful light was consciousness itself, knowing, all-powerful, humming with possibility. And the recognition dawned, this is the supreme reality. I was filled with awe and exhilaration. I began to soar through the vast expanse, delighting in its astonishing splendor in every direction. Then I became still, enveloped in velvety peace, resting in perfect repose. You must live, I heard a voice, a command, not in words, but in a kind of thunder. You must live. I heard it again. The command was simple but baffling. Then I saw a twinkling point of light nestled deep within the darkness, a shimmering, multifaceted sphere. On its many facets, colors flickered, scenes of a life I once lived playing out simultaneously. My life, my entire world contained in a grain of flickering light. You must live, the command resounded a third time, and now it was clear. I was to return to that life. But how could I possibly fit into that tiny world? Besides, that person's life was all over. How could it possibly be resurrected? Then, in an unbroken flow of wordless communication, the knowledge of how I was to return to that life streamed into my awareness. I must be fearless. I must remain focused in the present moment, and I must maintain the certainty that I am going to live. Any distraction or worrying, and I might not revive. There was a sudden stirring, a roaring sound like rushing wind, and I swirled around in a descending spiral, zooming downward at great speed. Then, just as suddenly, the commotion halted, and my vision opened into the operating room. I was watching from above. The scene spread out below, unfolding as if not a moment had passed. There was blood on the floor, the anesthesiologist still pumping on my chest, and the surgeon toiling away in my blood-filled abdomen. The resuscitation team rushed in, doctors bursting through the double doors, wide-eyed and breathless, taking their places around my body. I could feel their minds, bracing for the inevitable. She's already gone, they thought. And it was true. My limp body, drained of all its blood, looked beyond any hope of resuscitation. Maintaining contact with the expanded state, I was like an opening through which the power of consciousness poured into the room, the life of Bettina in the foreground, the great space of consciousness in the background, both filled with the same beautiful light. The atmosphere was charged with energy, guiding the efforts of the team. Yes, yes, you can do it. I'm going to live now. Let's get to work. The room churned with personnel. The whole team in sync, moving together as if in a choreographed dance. My certainty that I would live poured forth in non-stop encouragement. Yes, yes, you're doing great. I'm going to live. And as far as resuscitations go, this one was going amazingly well. But despite all their best efforts, they couldn't restart my motionless heart. And then I saw a man, a senior surgeon with white hair, dressed in blue scrubs, entering the operating room. Without a word, he reached into my abdomen. His hand disappeared into the lake of blood, searching around, finding the largest artery, my aorta. Wrapping his fingers around it, he clamped the great vessel shut. There was an intense stab of pain deep in my core, and then an explosion of white-hot light, like a sunburst, spreading at lightning speed throughout my body. It branched into millions of delicate channels, lighting up every pore, every cell. The touch of this light was searingly hot, its brilliance stunning. It was both terrifying and blissful. I lay there in fear and awe and gratitude because now I knew I was going to live. I wasn't just watching the scene from above anymore. I was now stationed in my body, lying flat on the operating table. All I felt was love, and all I could see was light radiating from my body. Then I heard the voice of the elder surgeon: "Stop compressions. He can feel a throbbing in her aorta." Everyone fell silent, waiting. Sure enough, 8 minutes after it had stopped, my heart started beating again. I was ecstatic, brimming over with energy, joy, and gratitude. I wanted to leap up and dance around the room. A few minutes later, one of the doctors leaned over and whispered in my ear, delivering a message that filled me with even more joy: "You have a beautiful baby girl, and she's doing fine." Just 5 days later, I left the hospital alive, revived, and mystified, with a beautiful baby girl in tow. I was me again, but I was not the same. I felt totally new, and for a time, my awareness and perception were extraordinarily sensitive and open. I could sense the inner state of others and felt connected to people even from a distance. I could look inside my body and see my own organs. I could feel an intense but harmless heat deep inside, as if my whole spinal cord was glowing red hot, and nothing, not even bags of ice laid out on my body, could cool it. When someone touched me, I could feel the energy flowing between us. My near-death experience brought many changes to my life. It launched me on the path of meditation, gave me the courage to take an extended leave from medical practice to raise my children, and inspired me to change the direction of my career. I devoted my medical practice exclusively to end-of-life care, joining the first wave of physicians in creating the new specialty of hospice and palliative medicine. I helped establish and directed one of the first state-of-the-art inpatient hospice facilities in New England. The near-death experience was perfect training for caring for patients at the end of life. It gave me the ability to discern between physical, psychological, and spiritual suffering and to address each of them with the appropriate modality. It gave me the ability to sense where a patient was in the dying process, to connect on a nonverbal energetic level, and offer companionship and encouragement. Having experienced the energy that passes between people through touch, I now had a new respect for touch as a powerful way to convey comfort. But the most potent medicine I had to offer was my inner state. My lack of fear and the stillness cultivated by meditation brought the most comfort. My daughter is now 30 years old, and even now, not a day goes by without me remembering my near-death experience. I've made progress in assimilating its gifts. Those who have known me over the years tell me I've become much more fun to be around. They say I'm more relaxed and natural, and that I'm good in a glitch or an emergency. My husband and I recently hosted 150 guests at our home for our son's wedding. Instead of getting all uptight as I would have years ago, I stayed relaxed and enjoyed the whole occasion immensely. When people remarked on how calm I was, I would smile, knowing it was all because of my near-death experience. So, thank you for letting me share my story. Near-death experiences are powerful revelations that can change your worldview, but for most of us, it takes time, perhaps a lifetime, to assimilate their gifts. Meditation has helped me understand, reaccess, and begin to express the great love that was awakened in my near-death experience. If you've had a near-death experience, you've had an experience of meditation. Meditation is a tried and true way to assimilate and unfold what you've been given. So, if you're curious, check it out and find out for yourself. Thank you.